Before we begin, tell us, if you saw a sick child alone and afraid, would you stop to help? If you enjoy heartfelt stories about kindness, family, and second chances, please like, subscribe, and share. Now let's begin. Sometimes the most important person in your life is a stranger for exactly one night. The ferry horn echoed through the fog as I stepped out of Harbor Lights Diner just after 10 p.m. My feet ached from 10 straight hours of carrying coffee pots and balancing plates, and the paper cup in my hand had already gone cold. October wind rolled off the water, sharp enough to slip through my jacket. All I wanted was a hot shower, 6 hours of sleep, and maybe enough energy to do it all again tomorrow. That was the plan. Life has a funny way of laughing at plans. The terminal was crowded despite the late hour. Commuters hurried toward the last ferries. Tourists dragged suitcases across the pavement. Nobody looked at anyone else. Everybody had somewhere to be. I was halfway across the plaza when I noticed the little girl. She couldn't have been older than 8. Blonde hair. Oversized navy coat. A worn stuffed fox tucked beneath one arm. She stood completely still near a bench, staring toward the dark water. At first I thought her parents were nearby. Then I realized nobody was standing with her. I slowed my pace. She looked too young to be alone. Too small. Too quiet. The wind lifted her hair as another ferry pulled away from the dock. She swayed slightly. Something about that made my stomach tighten. Maybe it was because my younger brother used to get dizzy when he was sick. Maybe it was because lonely kids always caught my attention. Whatever the reason, I started walking toward her. I never made it all the way. The little girl took one step. Then another. Then her knees buckled. The stuffed fox slipped from her arms. She collapsed onto the concrete. My coffee hit the ground before I even realized I'd dropped it. Hey! I ran. People turned. A few stopped walking. Nobody moved closer. By the time I reached her, her skin felt frighteningly warm. Her eyes fluttered open for half a second before closing again. Can you hear me? I asked. No answer. Her breathing was steady but shallow. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The operator's voice sounded calm while my heart tried to beat out of my chest. Within minutes, flashing lights reflected across the wet pavement. Paramedics arrived carrying equipment and questions I couldn't answer. What was her name? Who were her parents? Did she have any medical conditions? I knew nothing. Absolutely nothing. All I knew was that she had been standing alone before she fell. One paramedic carefully lifted the stuffed fox from the ground and handed it to me. Bring that, she said. Kids usually want familiar things nearby. I climbed into the ambulance before I had time to reconsider. The little girl was burning up with fever. 103.4 degrees, the monitor reported. I sat beside her while city lights blurred past the windows. Her small hand tightened around my sleeve once, then relaxed again. Mercy Harbor Hospital smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. Nurses moved quickly through bright hallways while monitors beeped somewhere in the distance. The staff rushed her into an exam room. Questions started immediately. Emergency contact? None. Parent information? Unknown. Identification? Nothing useful. The only items in her backpack were a coloring book, a half-finished box of crayons, and a ferry ticket folded so many times it looked ready to fall apart. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. A nurse approached me around 1 in the morning. You can go home if you want, she said kindly. We'll take care of her from here. I looked through the glass window. The little girl lay asleep beneath a thin hospital blanket. The stuffed fox rested against her shoulder. For some reason, leaving felt wrong. Then, as if she sensed the thought, her eyes opened. She looked directly at me. Fear filled her face. Her tiny fingers reached toward mine. Please, she whispered weakly. Don't leave me. And in that moment, without understanding why, I sat back down in the chair beside her bed and decided I wasn't going anywhere. The ticking of the wall clock became the loudest sound in the room sometime after 2 in the morning. Hospitals had their own rhythm. Soft footsteps. Distant announcements. The steady hum of machines reminding everyone that life rarely followed a schedule. I sat in the plastic chair beside the bed, pulling my jacket tighter around my shoulders. Lily had fallen asleep again, but every few minutes her fingers tightened around mine as if she needed proof that someone was still there. The stuffed fox rested beneath her arm. Rusty. I knew the name because she had whispered it once while drifting in and out of sleep. Do not forget Rusty, she had murmured. I promised I would not. A nurse named Claire stopped by around 2:30 carrying a fresh cup of coffee. You are still here? She asked quietly. Looks that way. She smiled. Most people would have left hours ago. I glanced toward the bed. Most people do not get asked to stay. Her expression softened. She seems calmer when you are around. After she left, I stared through the hospital window at the dark city beyond the glass. My phone buzzed. It was my younger brother, Mason. The fourth missed call of the night. I finally answered. Sadie, where are you? He asked immediately. Hospital. Silence. Should I be worried? No. At least I do not think so. I explained everything. The ferry terminal. The collapse. The fever. The little girl with nobody showing up. By the end of the story, he let out a long breath. You realize this kind of thing only happens to you. Probably. You are staying, are you not? I looked toward Lily. Even asleep, she seemed tense. Like she expected the world to disappear if she stopped paying attention. Yeah, I admitted. I am staying. Then stay, Mason said. I will cover breakfast tomorrow. Do not worry about the diner. The call ended, leaving me alone with the quiet again. Around 3:15 Lily stirred. Her eyes opened halfway. Confusion crossed her face before panic quickly followed. Hey, I said gently. You are okay. Her breathing slowed when she recognized me. Did you leave? She whispered. No. Good. The single word sounded so relieved that it broke something inside me. No child should have to ask that question. No child should sound surprised when the answer was no. She looked toward the chair beside the bed. Can you tell me a story? I laughed softly. I am terrible at stories. Please. So I told her one anyway. A silly story about a stubborn fox who kept missing the last ferry because he always stopped to help other animals first. Halfway through, her eyes drifted shut again. By the end, she was sleeping peacefully. The first peaceful sleep I had seen all night. I thought that would be the hardest part. I was wrong. At exactly 4:27 in the morning, 3 nurses suddenly hurried past the room. Their expressions changed. Conversations lowered. Something shifted in the atmosphere of the entire floor. The kind of change people feel before they understand it. A minute later, Claire appeared in the doorway again. This time she looked nervous. Very nervous. What happened? I asked. She glanced down the hallway. Her father is here. Before I could ask another question, the elevator doors opened somewhere beyond the corner, and every person in the corridor seemed to stop moving at once. Some people walk into a room and bring noise with them. Others bring silence. The man who stepped off that elevator brought both. I heard him before I saw him. Not because he was loud. Because the entire floor seemed to react to his presence. Nurses straightened their backs. Conversations stopped midway through sentences. Even the security officer near the station suddenly looked alert. Then he appeared around the corner. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark wool coat thrown over a charcoal suit that looked like it had survived a very long night. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had been running his hands through it for hours. But it was his eyes that caught my attention. Green. The exact same shade as Lily's. Fear lived there. Raw and unmistakable. Not the fear of a powerful man losing control. The fear of a father who thought he might lose his child. He moved quickly down the hallway. 2 men followed several steps behind him, but nobody needed to tell me who mattered. The moment his eyes found the hospital room, he stopped. For 1 second he did not move at all. Then he stepped inside. I stood automatically, unsure whether I should leave. He barely seemed aware of me. His entire focus landed on the little girl sleeping beneath the blanket. Lily, he whispered. The word sounded fragile, like something precious. Lily stirred at the sound of his voice. Her eyelids fluttered open. For a moment she looked confused. Then recognition spread across her face. Daddy! The relief in that single word nearly made me look away. The man crossed the room immediately and sat beside her bed. He brushed a hand through her hair. I am here. Lily smiled weakly. You took forever. A soft laugh escaped him. The first hint of warmth I had seen. I know. She reached for his hand. He held it carefully like it was the most important thing in the world. The room grew quiet again. I suddenly felt like an intruder witnessing something private. I picked up my purse from the chair and started backing toward the door. That was when Lily noticed. Her expression changed instantly. "Wait." I froze. She pointed at me. "Do not let her leave." Her father finally looked in my direction. Really looked. For the first time all night, those green eyes focused on me. The intensity nearly made me uncomfortable. "You stayed with her?" he asked. His voice was calm, deep, controlled. I nodded. She was alone. Something flickered across his face. Gratitude, maybe, or disbelief. All night. Before I could answer, Claire stepped into the room carrying a chart. "She never left," the nurse said quietly. "Not once." The man's gaze shifted back to me. I suddenly became very aware of my wrinkled diner uniform, my messy hair, and the fact that I had not slept in almost 24 hours. "Thank you," he said. Simple words. Yet something about the way he said them felt different, like they cost him more than most people realized. I opened my mouth to respond. Before I could speak, Lily squeezed her father's hand and smiled. "Daddy," she whispered. "She is the lady I was trying to find." The color drained from his face. The room went completely silent. And for the second time that night, I realized I understood absolutely nothing about what was happening. There are moments when a room changes before anyone says a word. This was one of them. Looked from Lily to her father, then back to Lily again, hoping one of them would explain what she meant. Neither did. Lily simply smiled at me with the sleepy confidence of a child who believed she had solved a mystery. Her father, on the other hand, looked as if someone had pulled the ground out from beneath him. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. Lily adjusted Rusty beneath her arm. "The lady from the picture." I frowned. "Picture?" The little girl nodded. "The one Mommy kept." The silence that followed felt heavy. I did not know anything about Lily's mother except that she was not here. Yet the moment those words left her mouth, I saw something shift in her father's expression. Pain. Deep and familiar. The kind people carry for years. He glanced away first. "Lily, sweetheart, you should rest." "But it is true." Her voice was weak but stubborn. "She looks just like her." My stomach tightened. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. Claire suddenly found a reason to check the monitor. Another nurse quietly stepped out of the room. Everyone seemed to sense they were standing in the middle of something personal. Finally, the man straightened. "I think we should let her sleep." His voice was calm again. Controlled. Whatever emotion had appeared was already hidden. He looked toward me. "Would you mind stepping outside for a moment?" I followed him into the hallway. The hospital corridor felt strangely quiet after the intensity inside the room. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled slowly. "My name is Owen Callahan." Something about the name sounded familiar. Not because I knew him personally, because I had heard it before. On the news. Around town. In conversations people lowered their voices to half. I suddenly understood why nurses had reacted the way they did. "Sadie Mercer," I replied. His eyes remained steady. "Thank you for helping my daughter." "You already thanked me." "Not enough." I shifted awkwardly. Gratitude made me uncomfortable, especially from someone who looked like he could buy the entire hospital if he felt like it. "She needed someone," I said. "That is all." A faint expression crossed his face. Not quite a smile, more like surprise, as though he was not used to hearing simple answers. Most people would not stay all night for a stranger. I laughed softly. Maybe. But Lily stopped feeling like a stranger around 2 in the morning. For the first time his expression softened. Only slightly, but enough to change his entire face. Then his phone rang. The warmth disappeared immediately. He checked the screen and declined the call without answering. A second later another call appeared. Then another. Whatever world existed outside this hospital room seemed determined to pull him back into it. He ignored all of them. "You should probably take those," I said. "Not right now." Before I could respond, a doctor approached carrying a tablet. "Mr. Callahan, we have the test results." Owen turned immediately. "And?" The doctor smiled. "Her fever is finally coming down." Relief flooded the hallway. I saw it in the doctor's face, in Claire's face, most of all in Owen's. But before anyone could celebrate, the doctor added one more sentence. There is something else we found in her backpack that you need to see. The smile vanished from Owen's face. Mine too. Because whatever was inside that backpack had already changed the night once. And somehow I knew it was about to do it again. Sometimes the smallest objects carry the heaviest secrets. The doctor led us into a quiet consultation room, just down the hall. Morning light was beginning to creep through the hospital windows, turning the sky a pale shade of gray. I could feel exhaustion settling into my bones, but curiosity kept me awake. Owen stood beside the table with his arms folded. Every part of him looked controlled, yet there was tension beneath the surface. The doctor placed a clear evidence bag on the table. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Nothing more. This was hidden inside the lining of the backpack, he explained. One of the nurses found it while checking her belongings. Owen stared at the paper without touching it. For a second nobody moved. Then he carefully opened the bag and unfolded the note. I watched the color leave his face. The reaction was immediate. Not dramatic. Somehow that made it more unsettling. What is it? I asked quietly. He did not answer. His eyes remained fixed on the page. Finally he handed it to me. My stomach tightened as I read the words. There was only one sentence written in neat handwriting. If Lily comes looking for this place, let her stay long enough to remember me. Beneath the sentence was a name. Hannah Callahan. The room fell silent. I already knew who she was before anyone explained. Lily's mother. Owen lowered himself into a chair and rubbed a hand across his face. For the first time since meeting him, he looked tired. Not physically tired. Emotionally tired. The kind that accumulates over years. She wrote that before she died, he said quietly. I looked down at the note again. Suddenly the ferry ticket made sense. The backpack. The determination that had carried an 8-year-old girl across town alone. She had not been running away. She had been searching. The terminal, I said. Her mother used to take her there. Owen nodded slowly. Every Sunday. His voice softened. When Lily was little, they would sit by the water and watch the boats come in. Something twisted inside my chest. I remembered the way Lily had stared across the harbor before collapsing. She had not looked lost. She had looked like she was waiting for something. Or someone. The doctor quietly excused himself, leaving us alone. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then Owen surprised me. She talks about her mother less every year. I glanced toward him. That is normal. Maybe. He looked through the window toward Lily's room. But I worry she thinks forgetting is the same thing as moving on. The honesty caught me off guard. Powerful men were not supposed to sound vulnerable. Yet there it was. Real and unguarded. Before I could answer, the door opened. Claire stepped inside with a smile. Good news. Lily is asking for breakfast. Relief flooded the room immediately. Owen stood so fast the chair nearly tipped backward. Claire laughed softly. And she is specifically asking for pancakes. I could not help smiling. Hospital pancakes? Claire shrugged. I did not say she had good judgment. For the first time all night, Owen laughed. It was brief, barely more than a breath. But it changed the entire atmosphere. Then Claire added one more sentence. There is something else. Owen's smile faded. What? Claire looked directly at me. She says she will only eat if Sadie stays too. It is surprisingly hard to argue with an 8-year-old who has already decided she is right. Claire delivered the message, then disappeared before either Owen or I could respond. I stared at the floor for a second, hoping someone else would solve the problem for me. You do not have to stay, Owen said. His voice was calm, but there was something careful about it now, like he was choosing every word. I know. She will eventually eat. I laughed softly. You do not sound convinced. The corner of his mouth twitched. I am not. 5 minutes later I found myself sitting beside Lily's bed again while a tray of pancakes rested across her lap. The hospital kitchen had done its best, but the pancakes looked tired. Lily did not seem to care. She took one bite, then pointed her fork at me. See, she said proudly. I told you she would stay. You manipulated me. What does manipulated mean? I glanced at Owen. That is your parenting problem, not mine. To my surprise, he laughed. A real laugh this time. Brief but genuine. Lily looked delighted by the reaction. For the next hour, the room felt strangely normal. Lily talked about school. About her favorite books. About how Rusty the fox had traveled to 12 states even though Rusty had never technically left her bedroom until last night. Every few minutes she looked toward me to make sure I was still there. I understood the feeling better than I wanted to admit. After our parents died, Mason used to check that I was still home whenever he woke up during the night. Loss leaves strange habits behind. Around 8 in the morning, a doctor cleared Lily for discharge later that afternoon if her fever continued to improve. Relief spread through the room immediately. Yet something unexpected happened. Instead of celebrating, Lily grew quiet. She stared at the blanket for several seconds. Do we have to go? She asked. Owen looked surprised. Sweetheart, you want to stay in a hospital? She shook her head. No. Her fingers tightened around Rusty. I just do not want to forget. The room became silent. I knew exactly what she meant. The ferry. The note. Her mother. Owen sat beside her bed and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. You are not going to forget, Mom. What if I do? She whispered. Sometimes I cannot remember her voice anymore. The pain in those words hit harder than anything else I had heard all night. Owen looked down for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded rougher. I worry about that too. Lily blinked. You do. He nodded slowly. Every day. Something changed between them then. Not dramatically. Just enough. The kind of moment people rarely notice while it is happening. A bridge quietly rebuilding itself. I looked away to give them privacy. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mason asking whether I was still alive. I smiled and typed back a quick reply. When I looked up again, Owen was watching me. Not in the intimidating way he had earlier. More like he was trying to understand something. Before I could ask why, one of the men who had arrived with him stepped into the room. He leaned down and whispered something in Owen's ear. The warmth immediately vanished from Owen's expression. His jaw tightened. He glanced toward Lily, then toward me. Whatever message he had just received had followed him here from the outside world. And judging by the look in his eyes, that world was not finished with us yet. The atmosphere in the room changed so quickly it felt like someone had opened a door and let winter inside. The man standing near the entrance waited silently after delivering his message. Owen did not respond right away. He simply looked at Lily, then at me, then back at Lily again. Whatever problem had followed him to the hospital was clearly important, but not important enough to make him leave immediately. Give me 5 minutes, he finally said. The man nodded and stepped back into the hallway. Lily noticed the exchange instantly. Children always notice more than adults think they do. You have to go, do not you? She asked quietly. Owen pulled a chair closer to her bed. Just for a little while. She lowered her eyes. Something is always happening. The sadness in her voice made the room feel smaller. Owen looked like he wanted to say something reassuring. Instead, he remained silent for several seconds. You are right, he admitted. Too many things have happened lately. Lily hugged Rusty tighter. Mom used to stay. My chest tightened. Owen's expression softened immediately. I know. And now everybody leaves. The words landed harder than she probably realized. Nobody spoke. Not me. Not Owen. Not even the nurse checking equipment near the wall. Because everyone in the room understood that Lily was not talking about one night in a hospital. She was talking about years. Owen leaned forward and gently touched her shoulder. I am trying to do better. Lily studied him carefully, as if deciding whether she believed him. Finally she nodded once. It was a small gesture, but relief crossed Owen's face anyway. Then his phone vibrated again. This time he checked the screen and sighed. I really do have to handle this. Lily glanced toward me. Sadie can stay. I laughed softly. Apparently I have been assigned a job. To my surprise, Owen almost smiled. Apparently. He stood and reached into his coat pocket. For a second I thought he was pulling out a business card or some formal gesture of thanks. Instead, He placed a small photograph on Lily's blanket. The edges were worn from years of handling. Lily picked it up immediately. A woman with bright eyes stood beside a younger Owen on a windy dock overlooking the harbor. The smile on her face seemed strong enough to light the entire picture. "Mom," Lily whispered. Owen nodded. "I thought you might want this today." Lily stared at the photograph as though it were treasure. After a moment she looked up. "Can Sadie see?" "Of course." She handed it to me. The second I looked at the image, my stomach dropped. Suddenly I understood everything. The shape of the woman's smile. The color of her hair. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. She did not look exactly like me. Not even close. But there was enough resemblance that anyone searching for pieces of a lost person might notice. Especially a grieving child. I slowly handed the photograph back. Owen was watching my reaction. Neither of us said a word. We did not need to. The mystery finally made sense. Then Lily looked between us and smiled. "See," she said proudly. "I told you." Before either of us could respond, the man from the hallway appeared again. This time his expression was urgent. Owen's face immediately grew serious. He glanced toward Lily one last time, then toward me. "Please stay with her until I get back." Something about the way he said it made me realize this was not a request. It was trust. And somehow that felt far more dangerous. Trust is a strange thing. Sometimes it takes years to build. Sometimes it appears in a single sentence and leaves you wondering what to do with it. I watched Owen disappear down the hallway with the other man. His long stride carrying him back toward whatever complicated world had been waiting outside these hospital walls. The moment he vanished around the corner, the room felt different. Quieter. Smaller. Lily noticed it too. She stared at the doorway for several seconds before looking down at the photograph in her lap. "He always walks like that," she said. "Like he is late for something." I smiled. "Maybe he usually is." She considered that. "Probably." For a while we sat in comfortable silence. Morning sunlight slowly spread across the floor, replacing the pale gray light that had filled the room earlier. The fever had left a faint pink color in Lily's cheeks, but she looked stronger now. More awake. More herself. She held the photograph carefully, tracing the edge with one finger. Mom loved the ferry terminal. I glanced toward her. "Really?" She nodded. She said it was the best place to watch people. Watch people. She liked making up stories about them. A small smile appeared on Lily's face. She would point at strangers and invent entire lives for them. The image made me laugh. "That sounds fun." It was. Her smile faded slightly. After she got sick, she could not go very often anymore. The room grew quiet again. I knew enough about grief to recognize when someone was approaching a painful memory. You never force it. You simply stay nearby in case they want to keep talking. After a moment, Lily looked out the window. "Do you ever miss people so much that it hurts?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about my parents, about all the years that had passed and the moments I still wished I could share with them. "Yeah," I said softly. "Ido." Lily nodded as if she had expected that answer. Then she surprised me. "I think Daddy hurts too." I looked toward her. "What makes you say that?" "Because sometimes he looks at old pictures when he thinks nobody is watching." My chest tightened. Children really did notice everything. Before I could respond, a nurse entered carrying discharge paperwork. "Good news," she announced cheerfully. "If everything stays stable for another hour, somebody gets to go home today." Lily should have looked excited. Instead, uncertainty crossed her face. The nurse left a moment later, and Lily immediately turned to me. "What happens when I leave?" "You go home." She shook her head. "I mean with you." The question lingered between us. I opened my mouth then stopped, because I honestly did not know. This entire experience had started less than 12 hours ago, yet somehow it felt much longer. Before either of us could say more, voices appeared in the hallway. Not rushed, not loud, but serious. I glanced toward the partially open door and saw Owen approaching. His expression was calm, though something about his eyes seemed distant, like he had just finished dealing with a problem that had not gone away. Then he stepped into the room and looked directly at me. "Sadie," he said, "there is something I need to ask you." And suddenly I knew whatever came next was going to change far more than one morning in a hospital. Some requests sound simple until you realize they are not. Owen remained standing near the foot of Lily's bed, his attention fixed on me. The room felt unusually quiet. Even the steady beeping of the monitor seemed distant. "What do you need?" I asked. He glanced toward Lily first. "I need someone to convince her to come home." I blinked. "That is your big request?" Lily crossed her arms immediately. "I heard that." Owen sighed. "Exactly." I tried not to smile. "Why does she not want to leave?" Before he could answer, Lily spoke first. "Because when I go home, everything goes back to normal." Her voice was small but firm. "And normal is not good." The honesty caught both of us off guard. Owen slowly sat down beside her. "What does that mean?" Lily stared at the blanket. For several seconds she did not answer. Then the words came out quietly. "It is too empty." Something shifted in Owen's expression. The answer clearly hurt because he already knew it was true. The little girl held Rusty against her chest. "Mom is not there. You are always working. The house is too quiet." Nobody spoke. I suddenly understood why a hospital room full of strangers had felt safer to her than her own bedroom. At least here people stayed. At least here she was not alone. Owen rubbed a hand across his jaw and looked away. I did not realize it was that bad. Lily gave him a look only children can give their parents. The kind that says they should have known already. I looked toward the window, giving them space. Yet a memory surfaced anyway. Years ago, after our parents died, Mason once told me our apartment felt haunted by silence. He had been 12. I had been 19. Neither of us knew how to fix it. We just survived it together. "Can I say something?" I asked softly. Lily nodded. Owen did too. Missing someone never gets smaller because you ignore it. Both of them listened. But it gets easier when you talk about them. Lily looked down at the photograph of her mother. "Daddy never talks about her." Owen closed his eyes briefly. "Not in anger. In guilt." "I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" she asked. He opened his mouth, then stopped, because neither of us knew how to answer that question. Finally he said the truth. "From hurting." Lily hugged Rusty tighter. "I was already hurting." The words landed between us with painful clarity. Owen looked as though he had been searching for answers in 100 different places, and somehow found one in a hospital room. For the first time since I met him, he stopped trying to solve the problem. He simply reached for his daughter's hand. "Then maybe we start talking about her again." Lily studied him carefully. "Really? Really?" Her eyes filled with cautious hope. Then she looked toward me. "Will you come visit sometime?" The question hit me completely unprepared. Before I could respond, Owen looked equally surprised. For one awkward second, all three of us sat there staring at each other. Then Lily smiled. "See? Nobody wants to leave." And somehow, despite everything that had happened, she was absolutely right. The hardest goodbyes are the ones nobody expected to matter. By late morning, the discharge papers were signed, the prescriptions were explained, and nurses were beginning to clear the room for the next patient. Everything pointed toward the end of a very strange chapter. Yet nobody seemed ready to close it. Lily sat on the edge of the bed wearing an oversized hospital sweatshirt, Rusty tucked securely beneath one arm. Every few minutes she glanced toward me as if making sure I had not disappeared. I pretended not to notice. The truth was I was doing the same thing. Claire stopped by one last time carrying a small paper bag. "Emergency snacks," she announced. "Because hospital food is not winning any awards." Lily accepted the bag with the seriousness of someone receiving an important diplomatic gift. After Claire left, the room grew quiet again. Owen stood near the window answering messages on his phone. The constant stream of calls seemed endless. Yet every time Lily spoke, he immediately looked up. It was the first sign that something was changing. Around noon, I finally stood and picked up my purse. I should probably go. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. Lily's smile disappeared instantly. "Already? I missed an entire shift. That diner will survive." I laughed despite myself. That is not exactly how employment works. She looked at her father. "Tell her to stay." Owen slipped his phone into his pocket. I have a feeling Sadie does not take orders very well. Good answer, I said. A faint smile crossed his face. For a second the room felt lighter. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and removed a white envelope. My stomach sank immediately. I knew exactly what it was before he handed it over. Owen. Please. No. He blinked. You have not even looked inside. I do not need to. His expression shifted somewhere between confusion and disbelief. Sadie, you spent the entire night here. Because Lily needed somebody. You missed work. That was my choice. He held the envelope out anyway. Take it. I shook my head. No. The silence that followed was almost comical. It felt like neither of us was used to hearing that word. Lily watched the exchange like it was a tennis match. Finally, Owen lowered the envelope. Most people would accept help. Most people are smarter than me. That earned a laugh from Lily. Even Owen looked dangerously close to smiling. Then I softened my voice. Your daughter needed a person, not a sponsor. The words landed harder than I expected. Owen looked down at the envelope for several seconds before quietly sliding it back into his pocket. Something in his eyes changed. Not gratitude. Not exactly. Respect maybe. The kind that cannot be bought because it was never for sale. A few minutes later, nurses arrived with a wheelchair for Lily. She immediately objected. I can walk. Hospital rules, Claire called from the hallway. Lily rolled her eyes dramatically. As they prepared to leave, she suddenly reached into her backpack. Wait. She pulled out a crumpled ferry ticket and handed it to me. Keep it. I stared at the faded paper. Why? Lily smiled. So you come back. Before I could answer, Owen looked at the ticket, then at me. And something told me that this story was nowhere near over. Some promises seem small when they are made. Then they quietly change everything. 3 days passed before I looked at the ferry ticket again. Life had returned to its usual rhythm. Early mornings. Long shifts at Harbor Lights Diner. Bills waiting on the kitchen counter. Mason reminding me that sleep was technically important for human survival. Yet every time I emptied my apron pocket, the faded ticket appeared. A strange little reminder of a hospital room and an 8-year-old girl who had somehow rearranged part of my heart in less than 24 hours. On Thursday afternoon, the diner was unusually busy. Ferry passengers crowded the booths while waitresses moved like athletes trying to survive a marathon. I was carrying 2 plates of grilled cheese sandwiches when the front door opened. The entire room seemed to pause for half a second. Not because anyone recognized him. Because some people naturally draw attention without trying. Owen stepped inside wearing a dark coat and the same serious expression I remembered from the hospital. Behind him stood no security team. No assistants. No dramatic entrance. Just a tired father holding the hand of a little girl. Lily spotted me immediately. I told you she worked here. Before I could react, she had crossed the room and wrapped her arms around my waist. Several customers smiled. One elderly woman actually sighed out loud. I set the plates down and laughed. You are supposed to be resting. I was resting. Then I got bored. That sounded exactly like something Lily would say. Owen approached a moment later. Sorry for the surprise. You sound like you planned this. A faint smile appeared. I definitely did not plan this. Lily pointed toward an empty booth. Can we sit? Neither of us had the heart to argue. 20 minutes later, my break somehow involved sharing fries with Lily, while she explained the complete life story of Rusty the Fox. According to her, Rusty had recently become mayor of an imaginary island populated entirely by seagulls. I stopped asking questions after that. Owen mostly listened. Occasionally he laughed. More often he watched his daughter. There was something different about him now. He seemed more present. Less distracted. As if the hospital had forced him to notice things he had been missing. Eventually Lily excused herself to visit the dessert display near the counter. The moment she disappeared, silence settled between us. Owen looked toward the window. She has been talking about you non-stop. I smiled. That sounds exhausting. It probably is. His expression softened. But it is also the happiest I have seen her in a long time. The sincerity caught me off guard. Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally, he silenced it completely. Important? I asked. He looked toward Lily. Not as important as this. Something about the answer stayed with me. Then Lily suddenly froze near the front window. Her smile vanished. She stared across the street at something neither of us could see. The color drained from her face. And when she turned back toward us, fear had replaced every trace of happiness. "Daddy," she whispered. "That is the man from the ferry terminal." Fear looks different on children. Adults hide it behind explanations. Children simply point at it. The entire diner seemed to fade into the background as Lily stood frozen near the window. Her small hand tightened around Rusty. The color had completely drained from her face. Owen was beside her in seconds. "Lily." His voice remained calm. "Look at me." She did not. Her eyes stayed fixed on the sidewalk across the street. I followed her gaze. A man stood near a newspaper stand talking on his phone. Average height. Gray jacket. Nothing remarkable about him. Yet something about his presence had clearly unsettled her. "Sweetheart," Owen said gently. "Who is that?" Lily swallowed hard. "I saw him that night." A silence settled over our table. "At the ferry terminal?" I asked. She nodded immediately. "Before I got sick." Owen crouched beside her chair. "What happened?" For a moment I thought she might refuse to answer. Then the words slowly came out. "He kept asking if I was lost." Owen listened carefully. Every ounce of his attention focused on his daughter. "Did he do anything else?" "No." She shook her head. "But he followed me for a little while." My stomach tightened. Lily quickly added, "Maybe he was trying to help." The uncertainty in her voice made it clear she was still trying to understand the memory herself. Owen glanced out the window. By then the man had already started walking away down the block. One of the employees behind the counter switched on the coffee grinder, filling the room with noise again. Life continued around us. Yet our table felt disconnected from everything else. "Did you tell anyone?" Owen asked softly. Lily looked down. "No." "Why not?" Her answer broke my heart. Because everybody was already worried. The honesty hit harder than anything dramatic could have. She had carried the memory alone because she did not want to become another problem. Owen closed his eyes briefly. The expression on his face was not anger. It was regret. Deep regret. When he opened them again, his voice sounded different. Softer. "Lily, you never have to protect me from being your dad." Tears appeared in her eyes immediately. Not because she was frightened anymore. Because somebody had finally said the thing she needed to hear. Owen wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pulled her gently against him. For several moments nobody spoke. The diner noise returned around us. Plates clattered. Customers laughed. Coffee poured into ceramic mugs. Yet the small world around our booth remained still. Eventually Lily looked up. "I think I just got scared when I saw him." Owen nodded. "That happens." She wiped her eyes. "He probably was not even doing anything." "Maybe." Owen smiled faintly. "But your feelings still matter." I watched the exchange quietly. The man who sat across from me now looked different from the one who had rushed into the hospital. Not because his life had changed. Because he had. Then Lily suddenly looked at me. "See," she said. "He is getting better." I laughed before Owen could object. "You grade your father?" "Somebody has to." Even Owen could not hide his smile this time. Sunlight streamed through the diner windows. For the first time since that strange night began, the future no longer felt heavy. Felt possible. And as I looked at the father and daughter sitting across from me, I realized something unexpected. Somewhere between a hospital room, a ferry ticket, and a stuffed fox named Rusty, none of us were strangers anymore. The people who change your life rarely announce themselves when they arrive. Sometimes they look like an exhausted waitress carrying cold coffee. Sometimes they look like a little girl holding a worn-out stuffed fox. And sometimes they look like a father finally learning how to stay. 6 months passed. Winter faded into spring. The harbor no longer hid beneath gray fog every morning. Ferry horns still echoed across the water, but now they sounded less lonely. Life moved forward the way it always does. Quietly. One ordinary day at a time. Harbor Lights Diner remained busy. Bills still appeared in my mailbox with impressive consistency. Mason still complained that I worked too much. Some things never changed. Other things did. Lily visited almost every Saturday. Sometimes with Owen. Sometimes with stories. Usually with both. She always claimed she came for the pancakes, but nobody believed her anymore. Least of all me. The ferry ticket she had given me stayed tucked inside my wallet. The paper had become worn along the edges from being carried around for months. I never told anyone that. Some keepsakes do not need explanations. On a bright Saturday afternoon, the diner door opened and Lily rushed inside carrying Rusty above her head like a championship trophy. Sadie. Several customers smiled immediately. She had that effect on people. I stepped away from the counter just in time to catch her hug. What happened to saying hello like a normal person? Too slow. That was her answer for everything. Owen followed a few steps behind. He looked different now. Lighter somehow. Not because life had become easier. Because he had stopped carrying every burden alone. The change showed in small ways. More smiles. Fewer phone calls during family meals. More weekends spent walking along the harbor with his daughter. Tiny things. Important things. We settled into our usual booth near the window. The same window where Lily had once spotted a stranger and frightened herself with an old memory. Today she looked happy. Safe. Present. The difference felt remarkable. Halfway through lunch, Lily suddenly disappeared beneath the table. A moment later she reappeared holding a folded piece of paper. I made something. She handed it to me proudly. I unfolded the drawing. 3 people stood beside the water. 1 little girl. 1 woman. 1 man. Above them, a ferry crossed the harbor beneath a bright blue sky. My chest tightened. It is beautiful. Lily pointed at each figure. That is me. That is you. That is Daddy. Then she pointed at a 4th figure drawn near the edge of the page. A smiling woman standing beside the water. And that is Mom. Silence settled over the booth. Not painful silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that comes when grief no longer controls every memory. Owen looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he smiled. She would have loved that. Lily smiled back. I realized something then. The little girl who once feared forgetting had finally stopped running from her memories. She had learned to carry them with her instead. Months ago, I sat beside a hospital bed because a frightened child asked me not to leave. I thought I was helping her through one difficult night. I was wrong. That night changed all of us. Because sometimes healing begins the moment someone chooses to stay. And sometimes the family you need finds you when you least expect it, sitting in a plastic chair beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a stranger who will not be a stranger for very long. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness changes a life forever. What would you have done if you were in her place? Share your thoughts below. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next story.